Are you working a decent, cushy, comfortable six-figure job, but you just don't see yourself doing that for more than a few years? And you would much rather live a life where enough money comes in that it entirely replaces your current job on autopilot, all while owning your own business? Well, you got two options. You can either buy an existing business or start one from scratch. In this video, I'm gonna cover how do you choose whether you should buy a business or you should start a business based on your current situation and your past experiences. Okay, we're gonna break this down by why someone should buy a business, and then we're gonna go into why someone should start a business, and we'll talk about the pros and the cons for each one. Okay, let's start off with why someone should want to start a business. Some of the pros. Now, when you buy a business, you're gonna get a much faster ROI because you're buying something that's already has existing cash flow, existing customers, existing revenue. It's been operating for hopefully more than 5 years and has been doing it profitably. So starting from day one, you're already going to have a paycheck. Another important aspect of this is you're already buying something that has existing operations and existing systems. So instead of trying to start from scratch and trying to figure out how to do something in a way that's going to be profitable, you already have the game plan there. It's already the day that you start. You have a book that tells you exactly what to do. And so when you're looking at what that ROI looks like, it's not just day one, I have a paycheck, but day one, I actually have the strategy and the game plan to continue to make money. And last, you're just buying something that's been proven, right? You're buying something that's over 5 years old. It's been profitable for those 5 years. There's no guesswork. They're doing something that works, and that something that they're doing is making cash. And so it takes away the guesswork. It takes away the risk of trying to start something new to see if it's going to be a good thing. You're already buying something that is good, something that is already profitable. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be work. Of course, there's work when you acquire an existing business. But as far as the risk and the ROI, when you buy something that's already been working, it's already been producing cash flow, it's going to give you a much better ROI. Okay, so now let's go through some of the pros of actually starting a business. Now, the cool thing about starting a business is that you have control over everything, right? You most likely are not going to go out there and take out a huge loan to start a business. You probably will start with either a few $100s and maybe a few $1,000s, depending on the type of business it is, and you control all of it. So you can try to start and build it in the way that you think is going to be the best way to do it. Also, when you start a business, you're probably the only person who's working for it. So by the time you get your first customer, hopefully you're going to be making a profit. Now, that doesn't mean every business that gets started from scratch gets profitable right away. That's actually the opposite. But if you're starting a business and you're trying to start it lean and you're doing a service, hopefully you are pricing your product to where when you start and you get a client, you're going to be profitable. Now, let's get into some of the cons that can happen when you are buying a business. Now, full disclosure here, I buy businesses. I love acquiring businesses, and this is exactly the strategy that I've used to build generational wealth and to make a life for me and my family. But there are cons, and not everyone should do this. So let's dive into those real quick. Number one, it is difficult to find a good deal on the market. Now, we're going to be doing other videos where we talk about how you go out there and how do you find these good deals. But in general, finding a good deal, especially when we're talking about the sub $10 million market, is hard. It's not easy. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. And of course, not everyone's doing it. So it is hard to try to find those deals. Number two, analyzing those deals can be difficult as well, especially when you're first starting out. It's really hard when you're first starting out in business acquisition to understand what is a good deal versus what is an okay deal versus what is a bad deal. And until you kind of go through it yourself and have mentors who kind of guide you through the path and yes, make mistakes and lose money, it's going to be hard to start off scratch knowing exactly what to do unless you have someone who's teaching you or mentoring you throughout the process. Another con is actually getting the deal financed or funded, right? So now let's say you actually found a great deal. And let's say you did have the skills necessary to analyze it and you found out, okay, this is a great deal, it's making great cash flow, has a great team, great product, everything looks great. But now you got to fund it, right? So when you're looking at funding the deal, do you have the cash yourself? Probably not. Do you know how to go throughout the bank financing process so that you can get up to 90% leverage on the deal? You probably don't. Do you know someone who's really wealthy who would want to invest in you? Maybe, but also not everyone does. So that is another challenge that you're going to face when you're trying to buy an existing business. Now let's jump into some of the cons of when you start a business. So number one thing is you're not starting day one with the paycheck, right? You are starting from scratch. So it is time consuming, right? It's going to take much more time for you to build your product or build your service, all the back end stuff that needs to happen before you take on your first customer so they have a great experience. All that's going to take a lot of your time. So when you're starting a business, it's not something you can just do and then be 100% passive on day two. It's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take a lot of energy to get it off the ground to to where you're hopefully actually making a return on your investment. Number 2 con is your risk of failure. Now, again, I'm not trying to kill anybody's mood here, but you have over a 90% chance of failure when you start your own company. You can look it up. There's a bunch of links out there, and I'll put some below, where you can see that after 5 years, the failure rate for startups is 92% or higher. Now, the opposite is when it comes to buying a business. If you're buying a business that's over 5 years old and it's been profitable those last 5 years, your success rate is over 90% for the next 5 years after you own it, right? So it's flipping because you already got past the phase of the risk of, will this be something that's actually going to work? You're buying something that has already worked and it's continuing to work. When you start a business, you have a great idea, you might have an amazing service, but you got to find those customers and you have to build a reputation from scratch, and that is much harder to do. All right, so real quick, we're going to go through a case study of a guy who I worked with named Will, and how he was able to go from a 6-figure salary job, but it was not the end all be all. He was not going to build life-changing wealth doing that, and he wanted something more. And so he decided to get into business acquisition. He decided to work with me, and this is what he did in 6 months after he worked with me. All right, so this is a breakdown of the deal that Will did. So the total purchase price, and this was a nail salon in Phoenix, Arizona. He bought it for $850,000. He did this with an SBA loan, which is a small business administration loan. We'll do more videos about this in the future. But he was able to get 90% leverage on this deal, which meant that he had to bring 10% of the purchase price, which is $85,000, in order to get this deal done. And so instead of doing it himself and using his own money, Will decided he was going to find an investor who believed in the project and believed in Will, who gave the $85,000 in exchange for equity, and Will was able to do this deal with zero money out of his pocket. Now let's look at how much cash flow Will is going to make after year 1. So we look over here and you see that the net operating income, which is how much money the business makes, was $240,000. Well, Will took out a loan that he has to make payments on. So we got to minus that, and we got to minus what he has to pay the investor. So minus $122,000, minus $11,750, and we get a yearly cash flow of $105,750. This is, again, Will put zero of his own money into this deal. He did this within 6 months, and he was still working his full-time W-2 6-figure salary job, and he was able to make this next deal happen and have this passive income coming in. So real quick, I want to break down kind of the money math on this deal to show you not just in the first year how much money Will is making, but looking over the life of this deal, what this really means in terms of building generational wealth. So you can see first year, second year, and third year, the business is making $105,000. Now, the caveat here is I'm putting this as the business is staying exactly the same. Now, on average, an average business that's been in business over 5 years and been profitable is growing over 5% year over year, right? So we're not even putting that in here. I'm doing a super conservative approach and just going to make it to where the business stays the same. Now, some years businesses will go down, some will go up, but the average is usually around 5% growth. And so we're going to make this flat just for the purposes of this breakdown. So makes $105,000 a year. All the 10 years of the loan, which is the SBA loans over 10 years. So full 10 years making the same amount, never grew a bit. At the end of that 10 years, that means $1.266 million of cash flow has come to Will. But now in year 11, the debt's paid off, and now that 105 that he's been making now turns into 216 per year in cash flow. So you see, doing one deal is enough to build life-changing wealth. You don't have to go out there and be the next Warren Buffett and do 100 deals. All this can happen just from one single acquisition. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, buying a business is not for everybody. It's not something that everybody should do. And if I were to break down the one main thing that separates whether you should buy an existing business or you should start something from scratch is on your experience. Have you had a job where you managed people? Have you had a job where you managed a profit and loss statement? Have you had a job where you had to put a new product out and manage that entire process? If so, then you by far, the better choice for you is going to be to buy an existing business. The return is going to be that much better, and you have the skills necessary in order to make it work. Now, if you have no experience, let's say you're 21 years old, you just got out of college, you've never really had a job where you have any type of management responsibilities or have never really been in charge of anything, then it's going to be very hard for you to be in charge of an existing business with an existing team and for them to look at you and know that you know what you're doing, right? Now, that doesn't mean you have to have the same experience as that industry, right? As an example before, Will never painted a nail in his life, but he was able to buy a nail salon, and it has grown since he's bought it because he's managed other companies before. He's had jobs where he's managed different services. So the biggest differentiator, whether you decide you're going to buy a business or start a business, is your experience. If you have experience, if you have job-related experience, go towards the acquisition route. If you don't, then go towards starting a business. Now, look, if you fall into the category of people where it makes more sense to buy an existing business, but you have no idea how to get started, you should hit the first link in the description below. You'll get personal guidance from me, someone who's acquired 6 businesses over the last 4 years that do over $6 million a year collectively. And I'll show you how to get funding, how do you find the deals, and how do you acquire these profitable businesses, some with even zero of your own money out of pocket. Once again, that will be the first link in the description below. Make sure you click on it. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this, and I'll see you on the next one.